having a little REC there?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so we're on. So what is most important?
Experiences. Having as many as you can, seeing as much of the world as you can before you go, and understanding it as much as you can, because I think that understanding the world that you live in helps you understand what role you have, what role you choose for yourself, and living that to its full potential in the short time that you have. So for me, things like travel, I tend to like to travel a lot. It frustrates me that it's so expensive to travel and it's so hard to get a lot of money. I kind of feel like as a citizen, as someone who's been born on the planet Earth, I kind of have a right to view it and see it and be able to experience it in its fullest. But that's just simply not the world that we live in. I wish there was some kind of mechanism by which, we could support people in going out to experience and understand other cultures that might make it a better world. But such as it is, I've kind of discovered about myself that I would prefer to do that and spend my time and energy on that than, I guess, have a family. I mean, I like kids, and my sister has 2 beautiful kids, and they're great. And one of the reasons I do the daycare, like I said, is because I like kids, but I don't think I need some of my own. But then maybe that's an experience that I am cutting myself off from, but I feel like the rest of the stuff is just more valuable to me personally.
Good, I heard it made a noise. Mine is freedom, and you need freedom to explore. So that sounds along the same lines.
Yeah, very similar.
The whole cultural thing. I've shared with you that I want to go to Denmark. So I'm with you on that as well. Is there anything else you would like to add to what is most important or in any other context?
Part of experiences, I think the most important experience you can have is having a connection with another human being. So that is really important to me as well, because I think we're biologically attuned to be that way. And to be social and to want to have other folks, and just talking face to face with a person is something that we need. I think in the same vein as just food and water and shelter and procreation. We need to have social ties with individuals, and it's strong to have. It doesn't have to be with your family. It can be with friends you've had for a long time, or friends you've just had for the first time. But even in those little moments where maybe I'm at my job and I'm talking to a vendor that I need some documents from, and we happen to kind of click and start talking about our family, our personal lives, and saying, hey, this is an interesting thing I've been having. Here's my life from my perspective, and often they're older, so I get to hear from them about the experiences they've had. And then I say, well, as a young person, here's how I view this. And having those little conversations that just kind of bubble up out of nowhere, that's to me a wonderful gift that person has given me. And that's part of it too, having those experiences. I think that's really kind of the fabric of the meaning of life, is having those experiences and understanding another person, seeing a little window into their life. Just for those little moments, that's really what it's all about. So that's another part of having an experience, is just seeing, and perspective shifts. Maybe that's something else I could see, because that usually will, and what I mean by a perspective shift is kind of suddenly understanding something from another person's point of view. And I've had that happen to me in a couple times in my life, and it is almost like a stress relief, because it's like, now I see how this person is viewing this, and where the logic comes from. And or it's some perspective that shifts in my own life, and I'm constantly trying to work toward that, to remember it's even these little things that happen in my life. There's so much more to me and to my life than just something like bad that's going on at work. And remembering that and thinking, shifting my perspective and saying, hey, 2 years from now, not even 10 years from now, but 2 years from now, I'm going to be in a totally different place. And this is part of a journey that I am taking to, I don't know where, but it'll get there. And remembering that often helps me to deal with psychological stress and emotional stress and all that stuff. So remember that, and I think that can also fall under the category of experience, and having these, and that is having a perspective shift like that is an experience, and it's sometimes very inspiring And like I said, stress relieves stress and helps you deal with a lot of really tough things that can happen in life.
For some reason, it just, I get the picture that if I had wrote a book, I would want you to write the foreword, because
Okay.
that just, yeah, that sums it up. People have asked me why, part of the question about what I, at the end, and you go, yeah, why are you doing this on camera? Well, you just answered that. Some people have mentioned the connecting with other people is their most important. I'm like, yeah, that's part of why I do this camera thing. I'm not just a bored guy with a camera. I'm a curious guy with a camera. In Danish, they have an expression, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Oja påstanden. Oja påstanden, maybe. It means eyes on the pole, and it's an expression that means that you're curious. And these little funny legs on the camera here will wrap perfectly around my walking stick that I'm planning on carrying around, so it's going to be my eye on the pole. So, I don't know. I was also thinking about, wow, why didn't I answer it like that? Why didn't I think of it? So, again, this is exactly why I do this thing with a camera. Get other perspectives, even whether they're far apart from mine or really close to mine. I enjoy it both ways. Any more to add to purpose or most important? That's what I was asking.
Right. I think I'm good. That sounds good to me. I feel like I've covered the different angles I've discovered.
Yeah, I do the follow-up questions as part of the interaction, connecting with people. Okay, so the religion question, what's your history with religion, and at what point or points did you decide it was or was not for you?
My parents are, my dad is a Catholic. He has a long history with the family has been Catholic for a long time, going back, although he doesn't practice as much. He doesn't go to church, although he definitely identifies as a Catholic, and that's a big part of his identity, and it's important to him. My mother was Lutheran. She was raised Lutheran. And when my sister, I have a younger sister who's 18 months younger than I am, when they were looking at schools to put us through, they decided to put us through Catholic schools because they both agreed that they have better discipline and have a better, at the time in the 80s or whatever, they had a better reputation for getting good education in the Sacramento area at least. And that I kind of tend to agree with that, although I haven't looked at any statistics around what's going on with that. But it seems to me that I feel like I got a really good education. So that is but they didn't baptize us or anything, mostly because they had a difference in which flavor of Christianity they wanted to go into. They said, we'll let them decide that for themselves, which I still think is the best gift that they could have possibly given my sister and I. So I did have a lot of Catholic dogma around me when I was young. There were a couple of years where we didn't go to church as a family, but we did have mass. We did go to mass during school hours sometime, and in some cases it was, I think, more than once a week, which is now I find really frustrating and confusing because that is class time that could have been used for the education. But whatever, I think I came out well anyway. And I've even participated in masses a couple times and I'm not, like I said, I'm not a baptized Catholic, I'm not part of the club, but I was a good student and I was someone who could handle reading in front of a crowd. It only happened a couple times, but and I believed in God and I spoke to God and I participated sometimes they would have reflections on, what's your relationship with God and little things like that, and there were certainly priests there that would come and talk to us and everything. And but when I was probably around 8, 9, or 10, I started kind of realizing a little late, having skeptical thoughts about Santa Claus. That's kind of where my skepticism kind of started, because I kind of started thinking, how does that work? And it was probably a little later than a lot of kids, because I really I love like science fiction and fantasy, and I really wanted magic to be real. I really believed that it was real, and that gave me a lot of comfort and security because I felt my life was going to have this kind of big adventure, but I would always end up being okay at the end because happy endings usually happen in those kind of movies. And I really wanted magic to be real, and Santa Claus, that whole myth, if you, whatever you want to call it, really anchored in my life that Santa, it has to be real because Santa Claus brings these presents. And that was always one of the highlights of the year. Was I remember one year when I was a little younger, I had to get up to use the restroom on Christmas Eve, and when I went to bed, there were no presents under the tree. But when I went to go, this was like at 2, 3 in the morning, when I went to go use the restroom, they were there, and the tree lights were on, and it almost looked like, you know, there were multicolored lights, and it almost looked like this magic fairy dust kind of coming down over the presents, and it just was like he came, you know, it was like this magical moment, and when Santa Claus went there, and I kind of went out and looked around at the presents. It was all quiet and peaceful, and I was in this house. I was warm and secure, and I was clearly loved, and the, you know, the fates, the magic of Santa Claus had blessed me with this great stuff. It was like this wonderful moment of joy and security that I still sometimes try to recreate because it was so beautiful. And it had to do, a lot of it had to do with the fact that I thought that magic had come into our house and done its work. And when I started kind of thinking, realizing this might not be real, I think perhaps my mom and dad are doing this. I kind of decided, you know, I think that's the case, but I want to keep believing in Santa Claus anyway because it's so nice. It makes me feel so nice to be secure and safe. And then one year, I think it was when I was 10, when we came home from Christmas Eve dinner from my grandparents' house, my dad, who was a very practical man, and was kind of tired of getting up in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve and losing his sleep so that, you know, his older kids could have this Santa Claus myth going, he just decided to start putting the gifts out the minute we got home. And so I sat there looking at him doing this with, you know, all of those illusions, even the ones I decided to keep, were shattered. I couldn't possibly keep believing that Santa Claus was real because I was seeing the lie, the truth, the lie to that truth right in front of me. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of heartbreaking for me. It was kind of devastating, and I didn't know kind of what to do with myself for a couple of years, where I was like, how do I make life be magical and secure again? What do I do with this? And I didn't know it at the time because I was young, but I think I kind of made this determination subconsciously that I wanted what I believed to be based on what I could observe and what could actually be proven to be true. And I went into high school believing that by the time I graduated, I was going to use that technique to figure out who I was going to be and what I was going to do with my life. And by the time I was in college, I'd be set and be like, hey, I'm ready to go. And of course, that didn't happen because that was very naive of me. But I wanted to base everything that I knew on what I could observe. And one of the things, it was another Catholic high school, still a Catholic high school. So, and one of the things that I remember looking at and observing was we had one of the classes we were in actually had us meditate and taught us how to meditate. It was someone who was the deacon of the school who was kind of he was certainly a Catholic deacon, but he also was interested in Judaism and a lot of different Eastern religions and taught us about that. I took an Eastern philosophy course from him, learned about Islam and Buddhism and Taoism and all that stuff, and found something that I was like, ooh, this is really interesting to me. I like that this is a lot deeper than what I've seen in my Catholic upbringing. It's kind of about finding the divine within yourself, and Catholicism is a lot more about finding the divine in the priest. You know, like you have to go through them to get to God and everything. But this is something you can look for within yourself. And so we went into meditation, and I was very serious about that. I wanted to, because I felt that was a legitimate part of myself, and I wanted to know who I was. So I was very earnestly trying to communicate with this divine that was inside of me. And nothing ever really happened. I didn't find anything that was inspiring or different or new about me that I learned. And I kind of was like, that's weird. Maybe God is not a person. I started to slowly break down because what I observed was that this connection was not there. I wasn't feeling what I was what I needed to feel in order to believe that it was actually real. And it started slowly kind of deconstructing God as over the next couple of years, over like from my sophomore year in high school to my sophomore year in college. And then it became, well, maybe God isn't a personal God, and it's just he's up there and he has a plan, but he doesn't really communicate with people in the deep way that I'm thinking of. And then it was, well, maybe it's not even a person. Maybe it's just a force that goes throughout the world and makes balances good and evil, and maybe it's like the force from Star Wars and all that stuff. And then finally, those were kind of the basic stages. And then finally, it was like that. Every single time, I was like, that just doesn't seem to be the case either, based on what I'm experiencing and observing. And eventually, it was just like, maybe just there is no God, and that fit. And that made sense based on what I could see. And I decided I don't need that. And I also, because I was still waiting to figure out who I was and what I was going to do with my life. Like, that hadn't occurred to me yet. That inspiration hadn't happened, because that was a ridiculous expectation, I think, at the beginning. Naive expectation, maybe I should say. But it still wasn't happening. There was no clear path.
The expectation that you would find a clear path.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That it would just kind of be presented to me. And I began to realize, nope, I've got to figure it out for myself. And that was part of it, too. That kind of dovetailed with I'm not observing God anywhere, and I'm also not getting this information that I want, that I need in order to continue with my plan, or whatever it was I thought it was. And I just thought, I just need to do it by myself. And I kind of realized that because there probably is no God, I had been doing that the whole time anyway. So if I could figure that all out myself, I could probably handle the rest of it.
You made it this far without him.
Because I believed in him, but clearly I was just talking to myself. Really, that's what I remember thinking, was those moments when I felt like I needed to talk to God, and I went to go talk to God. I was just talking to myself, and I found that strength within myself by taking a moment out to really stop and inspect what I was feeling and do a little self-evaluation of what was going on. That's really what I was doing. I wasn't talking to God. And that made sense to me based on what I had observed. It was those moments where I sat down and thought about what was going on and evaluated my own feelings and my own wants and desires and the places where I thought that I had screwed up and all that stuff. It was me. I was the one doing all that correction. And that really made sense to me. So I kind of decided, I don't think I believe in God. And I don't remember that being like a really scary thing. A lot of people really are afraid of it. But it just made sense to me. It just kind of clicked together that was the case, and that we live in a chaotic world and we have to take care of each other. That's, we don't have anyone else to take care of us. We have to take care of ourselves and of each other. And that is ultimately part of the meaning of life. What I feel my role is in the world is to take care of myself and take care of other people, and to get as much love and as much joy out of the world that I can, which I kind of mentioned in the first, experience the world as much as I can, and be happy that I have the opportunity to be alive in it. Because I feel like there are lots of like gene combinations that could have come out of my parents coupling, but I was the one that happened. It was me. So that's pretty special.
And what are you going to do with it?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's a big question. You get to decide that. That was the other thing. I have to decide this, because I'm not getting the message from the higher power that is apparently there. No one's sending me this. There was no moment where like a bunch of barriers fell and it was clear which way I should go. That never happened. And so I just was like, well, I have to decide. I have to commit to this stuff. I have to decide this is what I want to do, and I have to commit to dealing with all of the crap that I have to do to get there.
So the clearest path was just forward.
Yeah, just forward. Just pick what you want, and decide on something, and figure out what you need to do it. And that has worked for me. I now have a great job with the state that's got great benefits that I like. And I am a procurement analyst, so I purchase goods and services for the state. But that is because there's so much red tape that comes with spending taxpayer money. There's only certain ways that you can do it. You have to be very transparent. You have to make sure that you're fair and you get a good price, a competitive price. And there are lots of different purchasing methods that are okayed by the state, and you have to have all your documentation in order, and it's pretty complex. It's like hacking your way through a jungle trying to find out the best way to make these purchases, because there's all these laws that are put together, mostly because people want fair competition from their government. To seek fair competition, they want the best price, the best value, and they want transparency. So all these rules are in place to make sure that that happens. And they also, we have to get through small businesses, we have to buy recycled products, we have all these goals that we have to meet for all that kind of stuff. And I find it interesting because it is kind of like solving a puzzle once you get it all together, and then you finally get the people their goods. And I kind of find that, ironically, I now have kind of become like Santa Claus. He's not real, so I figured I'd become like him anyway. And I sometimes, when we get stuff in, I bring it to the people who ordered it, and they're not there, so I get to leave it in their chair. And they get to discover it when they come back. And knowing that they'll see it and be like, oh my gosh, this is the ergonomic wrist rest that I was looking for. This will help, or the mouse, or whatever it is, whatever the special highlighters that I need that will help me do my job better. Or the chair, whatever it is. So, and I don't necessarily like it any more than I think I would like anything else, but it's something that I know how to do, and it's something that I've decided, you know what, I can find joy here, I can find satisfaction here, so I'm going to pursue procurement. I'm sure I'd be happy during facility operations or budgeting or human resources, but procurement is where I've found myself, and it's fine. It works for me, so I like it.
I think
No.
David also brought these decorations.
Yes, and he said that I could have them, and I would like to take them.
All right, great. I'll put them here.
They're very cute. I could see myself living in a little town like that. So that was when I decided. That was how I decided that it was God wasn't for me, because the world just made more sense if God wasn't in it, and it was easier for me to deal with the problems knowing that I had to do it by myself, and that I was capable of doing it by myself. And sitting around waiting for God to do it would just be so frustrating and so, scary, that this is a better way of living my life, I feel. And if somebody presents me with some kind of evidence that God does exist, I'd be happy to listen to it and discuss with them what is it that you feel is convincing to you. I'm not like cutting myself off from that, because that's still, I'm not 100% sure that God doesn't exist. I'm more like 95% sure that God doesn't exist. There's that 5% that I still want to have, and have an open mind to that possibility. But that's kind of where I'm at.
My aphorism, sort of a word I looked up recently, listening to Friedrich Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that is?
Yes,
Okay.
I know the Ubermensch.
Yes. So my aphorism is that the purpose for our existence is to decide what our purpose of existence is.
Is that Nietzsche's, you said?
No.
No?
That's my Nietzsche version of my philosophy.
Okay.
Someone told me I spoke in sound bites, and I didn't really like that. And then when I heard this aphorism thing, I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, aphorism, that's me.
Oh.
Because I've always been told that I was blunt, rude, those kinds of things. And I understand why. I've been suffering from pain most of my life and not knowing about it. But I speak aphoristically now. That's the badge I'm going to wear.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Are you done with your religion?
Yes.
Okay. Hero. Well, you're definitely a hero for deciding your own path.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just forward. What else might someone say, wow, that's pretty heroic?
I think that might be it. Learning that if there's a challenge in front of me, I am perfectly capable of doing it, and I'm just going to set out and do it. Things like I purchased a home earlier this year, and it wasn't. I mean, it's certainly hard. It was, that's a momentous decision to make and a big deal. But I knew that I wanted to do so, and sometime around April or May of this year, I just decided, you know what, I'm ready, and I went out and I figured out what I needed to do, and I did it. and I did it for the most part by myself. I had support from my parents, especially when it came to getting the house ready to go, ready to meet for me to move in. But I met with a realtor, I met with a mortgage lender, and looked through my finances and figured out the plan that I was going to use to do this. And I did it all by myself. I have this house; it's just me that lives in it, and it's a pretty tight market right now. It continues to be. It's probably tighter than when I initially bought it a couple months ago. But my realtor told me that I beat out 7 other offers. And because I was willing to be flexible with time, I had an apartment that my lease was good for another couple months. I had the wiggle room, and I was able to put in a bid that was a little bit higher than the next highest person. And I did that by myself. And that's something I've also I took a 2-week trip to New Zealand about 2 years ago. That was something that I did with friends. But as far as my financing and figuring out what I needed to do to get a passport and just redoing the research to figure out what I wanted to do and how we were going to do that, that was something that I did by myself. Maybe not so much by myself, but my part that I played in it, that was something I did on my own. I found out how much money I needed to spend and how much I had available, and said, yeah, I can do this. And so I have done some traveling, even though it was expensive, but it was worth it for 100%. Probably one of the best experiences of my life going out there. I hope to repeat it sometime. Repeat it in another place, but it was a wonderfully successful trip. We never had any issues of not having a place to stay or getting robbed or harassed or anything like that. We were 3 women just driving around the North Island of New Zealand and we figured out how to get there, and we figured out the directions and all that stuff. We just were 3 bachelorettes just out there having a good time. And so, and people just sometimes just look at me and just go, wow, I can't believe you did that on your own. That's really incredible. And I get that, from my parents' friends a lot too, because they have their own children who, a lot of them are not capable of doing that kind of stuff. But I just figure no one's going to take care of me. I've got to do it for myself. And I feel like that's something that I am really proud of myself for. I like myself. I like that I can do that I have the wherewithal to just be like, you know what, I need to change this in my life right now. And I can do it. Just knowing that I know how to do it. And right now I have kind of a bad atmosphere at work. We've got kind of a toxic work environment, I think is the term, where we have a manager who is trying to revamp the way our department does business. And part of that is getting new staff in that are on her team that will go along with what she wants and be a better fit for what she thinks it is. So she's trying to, there's a lot of kind of bad things going on because they're trying to push people out and bring their own people in. And I decided about 3 weeks ago, you know what, if she wants me to go, I'll go. And I started putting a job. I put my first job application out this past Friday, which is 2 days ago. And I have the ability to make and say, you know what, I'm going to go get a new job. And I know that I can do that. I know that I have the skills to be able to do that. I can deal with having to put together, all of the application documents and having to go to an interview and deal with all that stress. I know I can do it. And I feel like that's pretty amazing and a pretty amazing skill to have.
I fill this out after every Sunday assembly.
The expression that keeps running through my mind while you're speaking, but I'm still paying attention, is "Jeg er klar."
I got 34.
Danish for "I am ready."
Yeah.
I counted 33.
I am clear also means that, but I am ready is what it means.
When you're in charge, you have to fill this out.
In my backpack, I have a little write-up of, it's less than a page long, about what I want to do in Denmark. And, this can be fixed. I am ready.
Right.
Those are 2 completely different sentences, completely different paragraphs. So I get that.
We need to clean up the bathrooms. I am planning. One of these
I can easily take up more time, but I want to get to my other hero question. And what superpower would you like to have if you could have any of them?
Flight. This
Flight.
is one that I've thought about actually for several years. I feel like that would kind of provide me with a lot more freedom, which is something that if I could just fly, to work, I wouldn't have to deal with traffic. It would be much easier if I could, fly to New Zealand, wouldn't have to deal with purchasing a ticket, a seat on a plane. Just the ability to get around in a way that's a lot easier and has a lot less logistics to it would be very, very nice. And also the thrill of, again, having a perspective shift. Sometimes just going up is a big perspective shift. And realizing that you have that when your house is this, this size, and you're looking at it from that size, you realize, wow, I have all these problems going on, but there are all these other things that are happening in the world that are wonderful and beautiful, and I need to keep remembering that. And so that's part of it too. But I've had several dreams about being able to fly. Some of them I don't dream too often, and when I do, they're usually dreams that I can tie to different anxieties that I have. But occasionally, a few times in my life, I've had very, not lucid dreams, but dreams that really give me the sensation that I am flying. And I even feel like in my stomach that kind of like weightless feeling. And it's some where it's almost like I'm hang gliding, like I can look down and see my feet dangling and see the trees of my childhood neighborhood like going by, and I can see the street below me, and it seems very, very real. It's very I can't do anything with it, but it just feels like there's an emotion attached to it and a feeling. And so that is kind of something that I'm just like, yeah, I'd like to be able to fly, just to be able to have the freedom and the perspective shift that going up into the atmosphere will afford you.
Being an lieutenant engineer, I'm thinking, wouldn't teleporting be more efficient?
Oh, maybe.
And then I started thinking about, okay, what advantage would flight have over teleportation? And then you mentioned it. You said you would like to go up.
Yeah.
And see things from a different perspective, and that's really cool.
Right.
I have jumped out of an airplane once.
Really? Oh my.
I forget, it was 42nd or 43rd birthday. A friend of mine was really excited about doing it, and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna really like it, but I do want the experience.
Right.
And he was very unimpressed with my reaction when I landed. I'm like, yeah, my leg hurts because the strap was this, that,
Oh.
and, But I really did like looking down and seeing the ant people.
Right.
That perspective, and it wasn't very high up.
Right.
They just spun around the circle and said, all right, jump out. You had an instructor strapped to your back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a nice recollection while you were telling that story.
Yeah, that's not necessarily flying as much as it is falling. That's the distinction I would
Yes,
make. But
yes.
it's the closest thing we can get, I suppose. That does intimidate me quite a bit because it does involve landing, and I would worry about the strength because I'm a bigger gal. The strength, I'm sure that it's fully rated for lots of poundage, but that is kind of I find that's something an irrational fear that I have when I go on things like roller coasters and things like that. I'm like, is it going to be enough to hold me in? Because I'm not a slight, skinny little thing. I've got some heft to me. And that may be more.
I had to pay extra.
Yeah, that might be more psychological than anything else. But maybe someday. Just for now, the building that I work in with this horrible working environment is on the 10th floor. I'm on the 10th floor, so I get some there. Sometimes I find myself on my breaks just kind of staring out the window and thinking things over and remembering that I've lived in Sacramento, thinking about, it's the city of Sacramento, I love it here, my family's here, don't let all this other bullshit get you down, and you have a bigger history, life is bigger than this, and that helps out a lot. And then the first time I flew in an airplane was 2008, I think, so that's really, it feels like a long time ago, but over the span of my 33 years, it's kind of relatively recent. I was in my 20s when I did my first airplane ride, and getting to sit in that window seat and see the ground fall away and and see everything become so small. That was really thrilling. That was really amazing. I would like to do a hot air balloon ride. Maybe I'll go that way. That I could handle. I've thought about going out and doing one of those.
I think that would be even colder.
Cool, maybe.
'Cause that was one of the things I was concerned
I
about.
tend to run hot, so I don't think I would mind it so much. I'll bring a jacket. I'll be fine.
My tumor was next to the pineal gland, which is right next to the temperature control.
Oh. So there's some
Apparently,
wackiness there, huh?
yeah. Apparently, pineal gland. All they know about it is it helps with women's menstrual cycles,
Thank goodness for that.
which could explain the hot flash thing.
Oh, baby.
So I've mentioned that to the
Interesting.
endo heroes online. They're like, I don't know why I can't keep my temperature stable. It's like, oh, I can tell you all about that.
Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah. But I tend to, when other people are cold, I tend to be fine. So, and I tend to be, it's weird. Like I don't like how short the days are in winter, but I'm much better able to handle cold temperatures than I'm able to handle hot temperatures. So I have this thing where I'm like, I'm not sure which one I like better. And summer has the nice long days, but winter is, with the heat is sometimes gets to me. Although I've lived in Sacramento my whole life, so I'm used to really hot weather. So I've also learned how to cope with it. Anyway, yeah.
I'm comfortable at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, plus or minus 1 degree.
I think I'm around 72, 73.
And I do think it's easier to dress warmer than it is to dress colder. So I'm really hoping I'm going to enjoy Denmark.
Right. Good. We'll have to see. Denmark is up there in the north. It's cold,
Yes.
but you'll figure it out.
And
And I
flat.
do agree with you that it's easier to stay warm in a cold atmosphere, in a cold environment than the other way around.
Yeah.
So you just put more layers on. But sometimes I do think, to add one more thing to that question, I did study as a music major with an emphasis in vocal performance. And I've had, even though I get a lot of very, very intense stage fright when I try to sing, I have noticed that if someone finally pushes me and was like, I want to hear you sing, and I do so, and it's in some kind of public space, like in an office or something like that, I give a little bit of sing a verse or two, and by the time I'm done, the entire place has ceased activity, and they're all looking at me. And I sometimes feel like that's kind of a superpower I have. I have the ability to mesmerize people. And that, it really feels like, something out of a movie where everybody stops and stares at the hero and is like, oh my gosh, look at what they're doing. So I could say that is kind of a superpower I have. I can mesmerize a group of people, although I'm not good at it because I have a lot of stage fright. So I'm not really into displaying that power all that much. But that's something that I could say that's
To
interesting.
share a similar experience, there's another group called Blasphemy Breakfast.
I've seen it before.
Nancy goes to the same one I go to. And everyone likes to chat about everything. So I was sitting next to this woman, friends with her, and talking about this concept of a play date. She's older than me, she's lesbian, and I'm like, those aren't concerns. This is a play date.
Yeah.
And she kept asking me, well, what would that involve? And I'm like, well, what do you want it to involve? That's kind of where I was going.
Right.
And she's like, I just don't understand your concept of the play date. And, I was eating, I took a bite, and I'm like, would it help to tell you that what we're talking about right now, this will qualify as a play date? And she's like, okay, I like that.
A grown-up play date.
And I realized that everyone in earshot was dead silent, and they were looking at us.
Oh.
And I'm like, see, I think I've got something here, because everyone has stopped eating and talking to listen to what we're talking about. So yeah, I don't know if any of my How a Hero Does It is even worth watching, but I've decided that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to get it off my fucking chest. And watching myself, listening to myself again, it's kind of a time warp, because I'm reliving my life, just moments. My guts. See, shit like this that just takes my focus away from my topic. What was I talking about?
You were talking about you didn't want to be doing your How a Hero Does It anymore, or something. You didn't want this to be part of it anymore, or something like that.
Oh, no, I must have worded it funny. Yeah, I'm glad I recorded this because this is one of those stoner, brain damaged, sleep deprived moments
Yeah.
where I can't think of what I'm thinking about because the pain is just too much. So I'll watch this later and maybe we'll continue this conversation.
Sure.
But just doing a How a Hero Does It. Now I can't get that expression out of my head because I've been focusing on that. So any more hero stuff?
No, I think that's it. That's the last little bit I wanted to add about the mesmerizing singing stuff.
Now the really fun part is, do you have any questions for me?
Right. Well, I apparently already answered my own first question, which you've gotten a lot, which is, why are you doing this? But what's your larger plan with this thing? What are you doing with all these recordings, and what are you saving this up for?
I've answered this question many different times, but in different ways, but they're all true. And it goes from I'm a bored guy with a camera to I want to take over the world. Okay. This whole universe thing, I'm sure I've mentioned it before. I talk about it out there a lot. How they're viewing Hubble's data backwards. That's the shortest way I can put it. And I have to go in and say, listen, jerks, what you're teaching is what you believe and not what you understand, because you understand it backwards. So I've been doing a lot of focus on that, and still fighting all the fucking migraines and everything that's going on. I try to think of good stories. And one of them is the one I wanted to tell you, but I don't know if you have enough time to hear it.
I can hear it.
Well, I'm going to shut this off to end our question game interview and start that up, unless there's anything else you would like to add to the internet.
Do you ever go back and watch any of these?
Yeah. I've seen every single one I've done once. A couple of them I've seen a couple times. The first big project I did was 9 muffins. Just the number 9 muffins, no space, on YouTube. Because I was still new to this whole cannabis thing. And that's how I'm treating all these problems I got. It doesn't take away the pain, it makes it copacetic. Instead of sleeping on a metal pyramid, you're sleeping on a metal pyramid with the top chopped off. It's still uncomfortable, but it's way preferable. So I did a video on that. I did the video with the yellow ribbon hat. Do you remember seeing that?
Yes, I did.
For my endo friend, Julie. Yeah, I just want to keep going with this camera thing. I'm going to get this universe shit on camera because it's kind of one of those conundrum things. A man wearing a backpack is found dead in the desert with no footprints around him. Turns out the backpack is an unopened parachute.
Oh.
So that's the conundrum, the puzzle you have to solve.
That's a perspective shift right there.
Yes. And you mentioned solving puzzles. And yeah, this universe thing, it's like a perfectly set up puzzle. In high school, I was a real nerd and was in a mathletes club.
I did some kind of science Olympiad one year when I was in 6th grade or something like that,
Yeah, well, they were asking questions we had no idea with, and I'm like, I'm just going to plug away at this and see how far I could get. I didn't get any of them right, and that was just a really amazing experience. But the physics stuff, when I watch the videos, they say we're looking back in time because these are light years distance. So we're looking at history. The further back we go, the further back in time we see. And then their second statement is the further out we go from us, we see things moving faster and faster and faster. So their conclusion is that they ignore their first statement and just go with the second statement and say the universe is flying apart. Well, if you pay attention to the first statement, you realize that the fastest speeds, the ones that are farthest, are the oldest. So things are slowing down, not speeding up.
Interesting, yeah.
And I've been trying to explain that in a layman's terms. Now, you're pretty damn smart. I don't know what your education is, but you pay attention to detail, certainly. You're very well spoken as well. And some people it's just like, nope, I don't want to listen to this because I would have to understand something or, you know, put my focus away from whatever I want to.
I know that experience very well.
Yours.
I don't know if that's mine, but I'll take it.
So with the physics thing, it's actually about belief. Neil deGrasse Tyson, on one of his, on probably several of his things, says, you know, hey, we're science. If you can show us that we're wrong, we have to believe you because this is logical. But he's also one of the people that says that we're expanding and accelerating apart. And there's bullshit about quantum physics that I can go and hammer them on too.
Sure.
But I forget where that went. That came from something about my goal, or I don't know. Anyways, you want to hear my kid story?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm gonna put the camera on me,
Okay.
just so that everyone at home